What kind of game do we expect here? Because it's supposed to be two great offenses and two great defenses. Is that how you see it? What wins out, Heath? I mean, what do you think? Is it a high scoring? Well, 27-20, you already said. We're in the 27 to 20 or 24 kind of range. But is this a good offensive game, a disappointing offensive game? What kind of fantasy game are we thinking here?
I think that, like, based on, because we had a lot of high caliber players, I think there may be more disappointment based on where guys were drafted than booms. We all took the under. The over under is 52. We were all below that.
Yep.
I'm intrigued to see what the offensive philosophy is for the Bills, and if it's exactly what it was last year, if the offensive coordinator change made no difference, or if there is a noticeable change in one regard, either fewer Josh Allen runs or more passes to running backs or more handoffs. Like, do any of those things happen? And then on the other side, can the Rams run the ball effectively, and who's doing that running?
To simplify things, you're going to start Josh Allen. We'll talk about Stafford. He might be a tough call. You're going to start Stephon Diggs, and you're going to start Cooper Kupp, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel Davis and Allen Robinson, are they easy starts for you guys?
Yes. For me, they are. They are both number 2 fantasy receivers. With Robinson, it's about that Bills secondary. Not having Tre'Davious White, man, they're going to get tested. There's no question about it. And I know that they've got Dane Jackson on one side, and he played really well last year. It's going to be 2 rookies on the other side. It's either going to be Kyer Elam or Christian Benford, who's played well in camp and in preseason games. He'll be the other one. And I don't think either one's going to be assigned Cooper Kupp the majority of the time. I think they're going to stay to their side, and they'll probably see a lot of Allen Robinson. When it is Cooper Kupp, maybe that's when Buffalo makes a flip. We'll see what they decide to do in that situation. But I'm a little bit nervous about how that will go for Buffalo.
Yeah, Robinson's a borderline number 2 for me. I think you're probably in a 2 wide receiver league. I could see having 2 guys who are better that you didn't want to start him. And Davis is a boom bust number 3 wide receiver for me. It will be very interesting to see what his target share looks like.
You should know that Tre'Davious White is one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL. He tore his ACL last season. In 11 games that the Bills played with Tre'Davious White, they allowed 3 touchdowns to wide receivers. 3 touchdowns to wide receivers in 11 games. In 8 games without White, including the playoffs, they allowed 7 touchdowns to wide receivers. They were significantly worse. This is also an interesting matchup because the Bills, great defensively last year. If you go back and look at their schedule, they faced such a pathetic schedule. I mean, they just barely played any good quarterbacks, basically. And Matthew Stafford had a really good year. He faced one team last year that finished in the top 10 in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. That is, fewest fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. One of the 10 toughest matchups based on end of season standing there. So he had an easy schedule. The Bills had an easy schedule. Now let's see what they're made of here. I mean, I'm not doubting that the Rams were great offensively and the Bills were great defensively, but I just wanted to point that out. It's not like there's a lot of history of Stafford last year going up against tough matchups. It basically never happened. Would you guys start Allen Robinson, Gabriel Davis, or Dameon Pierce?
I believe I have Robinson ranked the highest.
Non-PPR, it would be Pierce. Full PPR, probably Robinson.
Okay. How about Jerry Jeudy in Russell Wilson's homecoming game over the 2 wide receivers that we're talking about here, and then I'll move on.
Robinson.
I've got Jeudy. Oh, go ahead, Heath. I'm sorry.
Robinson, significant gap. Jeudy, get Davis.
Why isn't Singletary your highest ranked running back in this game?
He's not for me, so I'll answer it. I think the Rams' run defense is good. They were 6th best in rushing yards allowed last year, and they got Bobby Wagner in the middle of their defense. I think that makes them maybe even better. And there's always the chance that Singletary, falls out of the game plan a little bit.
Yeah, I'm never going to rank him high until I get verification that he's either catching passes or handling short yardage. And especially not against a defense like this.
I'm not even sure if I'll rank him high next week against Tennessee.
Two of the resources that I use in these week 1 previews, Sharp Football Analysis and PFF, they rank front sevens, they rank secondaries. Sharp Football Analysis has the Rams front seven number 1 in the NFL, and PFF has the Rams defensive line number 1 in the NFL. And they gave up 3.67 yards per carry to running backs last year. So it is a brutal matchup. Would you start any running back in this game over, let's say, Breece Hall against the Ravens, which also looks like a really tough matchup and a timeshare situation?
I would trust Akers over Hall in non-PPR and in any other PPR.
I have Hall 1 spot ahead of Akers in both. That might change by Thursday, but they're right in the same range.
I mean, I did like that Akers sounded confident when asked about if he's ready to play.
He said I'm going to prove Dave Richard wrong. Dave Richard's been talking smack on me all summer, and I'm going to prove him wrong.
You know what? He's going to have the chance, but I still think he's going to split enough where he won't have a smash game against Buffalo. And you got to give Buffalo's run defense some credit. They've got a big defensive line too. Adam, you didn't tell us. I'm curious, where do they rank in Sharp's analysis and on PFF?
Yeah,
have that information. Because I think Akers has a chance to be okay, but man, I really want to know if he looks the same as he did in the playoffs last year, or if he's found a little bit more hop in his step.
So the Bills are 3rd. Their front seven is ranked 3rd by Sharp Football Analysis. PFF doesn't rank the front seven; they rank the defensive line.
Sure,
what's the Bills 13th? But what I've noticed with a lot of just reading these is that it seems to me they lean heavily on pass rush and not so much stopping the run. But this is not an easy matchup, and this is why these guys are not ranked as starters. So these are flex options at best, and it seems like Cam Akers is the favorite one there. Let's say, all right, let's move. I guess I could do some Cam Akers ors. I'll do a few real quick. Cam Akers or Miles Sanders?
Sanders.
Akers.
Cam Akers or Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
I have Clyde 1 spot higher.
Clyde.
Okay. And then real quick on the tight ends. The Rams they finished the season allowing 1 touchdown to a tight end in their last 11 games, including the playoffs. That was George Kittle in the AFC Championship game. Do you guys like either Dawson Knox or Tyler Higbee? Both of them on paper, based on last year, have pretty brutal matchups.
I would try not to start either one. There's an emotional motivation for Dawson Knox. It's his first game without his brother. So I'm sure he'd love to score. I'm thinking they save that for next week against Tennessee. I think Higbee also gets maybe 3 or 4 grabs in the game, so he might be a little more appealing in full PPR. I would start Higbee ahead of Knox in all formats. But I've got Njoku ahead of them. I've got Evan Ingram ahead of them. I even, as of now, as we sit here, I've got Hunter Henry ahead of them.
Yeah, I'll start Higbee as a low-end option if you don't have anybody better. I like him over all those names that Dave just said. And I'm not starting Knox.
Yeah, the tricky thing for me is I have Dawson Knox in a league, and I look at the waiver wire and I see Hooper, Njoku, Everett, Ingram, Irv Smith, Tyler Higbee, Logan Thomas. And then I just have to make the decision. They're all sort of the same. Do I drop Dawson Knox? I do like him more than those guys season long.
Okay, well, let's see if we can answer that question right now. You're nervous about him against the Rams, and I think rightfully so. How do you feel about him at home against the Titans?
You don't know that he's ever going to be really a matchups guy. It's just I buy into him in the Bills offense. And if the Bills are going to score a lot of points, I'm not giving him no chance to be good in this game. So I think I'm just going to stick with him. It's kind of like the DST argument that we had earlier, Heath. It's like I'm not going to roster 2 of these guys. I like Knox the best season long. And this, obviously, I'm not talking to me right now. I'm talking to all of you who might be in a similar situation. I would just say, unless there's an obvious guy on waivers that you think is definitely better this week, and I don't think that's the case with Higbee, Irv Smith, Ingram, Everett, Njoku. Like, I don't think they're obviously better than Knox. I'm just going to stick with the guy I like best rest of season and stick with Dawson Knox. That's how I play it.
You like Knox because of the touchdown potential. Do you like Knox at all for what he might be able to do in terms of catches and yards?
Yes, I do think he takes a step. I've always felt that way.
Which of the Bills pass catchers do you think is the bust, Adam?
McKenzie. probably. You know what I think it's going to be? It's kind of, I'm going to compare it to the Packers, what they were a couple of years ago. You had Devontae Adams, who had a ton of targets, and then you had three guys who were basically tied for second: MVS, Aaron Jones, and Robert Tunyon.
But
and they all had
were
their
tied for
moments.
second with like 70 targets or something. Weren't
Yeah,
they?
so I don't think Diggs is gonna have the target share that Adams will have, and I think the Bills are gonna throw a lot more than the Packers did. So it'll be a little bit more, evenly distributed. But I think between Gabe Davis will be 2, and then McKenzie and Knox will be tied for third-ish. But they won't be that far behind Gabe Davis. I think they'll all have their weeks. They'll all have their moments. Does that make sense?
Sure. But if I'm comparing Dawson Knox to the tight ends on a waiver wire, I'm looking for the tight end that can be a little more reliable in terms of catches and yards, and not one who I'm starting with my fingers crossed that they'll catch a touchdown. And I think it's worth looking at Buffalo's early season schedule before you commit to Dawson Knox over the long term, because some of those teams that he's going to play against, and it might be all the teams, it's a tough schedule for Buffalo to begin the year. I think you might have some trepidation about him being a week after week touchdown or bust guy when you've got other tight ends out there that might be able to come through for.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I don't see the other guys out there being able to come through. I think they're all going to be touchdown or bust, basically.
Okay.
But fair enough. All right, let's go to Stafford now. I have made the decision. I'm going to start Matthew Stafford over Trey Lance. What do you guys think about Matthew Stafford this week?
I would not start him over Trey Lance, but I think he's a fine start in that Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr range, ranked as a high-end QB2, probably going to give you 20 fantasy points, maybe even give you 30 if everything goes right. But he's a QB 13, QB 14. I would start him over Rodgers. I would start him over Cousins. I would start him over Carr. I would not start him over Lance or Fields.
I would start him over Lance and Fields. I believe that he can come out and have a good game. First game at home since the Super Bowl, threw 2 or more touchdowns in 17 of the Rams' 21 games last year. I already talked about the Bills' secondary and the concerns that they have. I think that they might make some mistakes there that help the Rams score some touchdowns. I think he's got 3 score potential. I like him as a low-end top 12 fantasy quarterback. I have him 1 spot ahead of Cousins. I don't like Cousins' matchup this week. I've got him 2 spots ahead of Trey Lance. I have him significantly ahead of Burrow and Rodgers and Carr.
Stafford had 7 games last year with 28 or more fantasy points and 6 point per passing touchdown leagues. He was a big game kind of guy last year. So we'll see if that happens this year. All right.
Big game.
Sit the DSTs if you can, but don't drop them.
Don't sit the DSTs, Adam. We came to an accord
are
40 minutes ago that we weren't going to do this.
Well,
How
okay,
can I reach out to you and try to be nice at the start of the season, and you just disregard it?
He just took your olive branch, Heath, and he busted it over his knee. Well, he tried to bust it. He just bent it a little.
Are they ranked as starters? Are the DSTs ranked as starters this week?
Yes. There are some other ones that I like better, but I think that they're worth starting this week. You take your lumps and you move on.